Ethan Ward never thought his life would become anything special. He was a quiet engineer who worked at a water treatment plant in a small coastal city. Every day felt the same. He woke up early, made tea, checked the plant systems, repaired old filtration units, and went home tired but satisfied. He liked simple things, calm mornings, clean water, and quiet evenings. But everything changed the night the sky glowed. Ethan was on the rooftop of his apartment building, fixing a loose antenna. The night air was cool, the stars bright, and the world peaceful. Then the antenna buzzed. A sharp vibration ran through the metal, almost like it was alive. Ethan froze. The buzzer on the antenna had never acted like that before. He leaned closer. A strange pulse traveled across the metal in a steady rhythm, tick, tick, tick. The pulses were spaced perfectly, not random at all. Like a signal. Ethan frowned, adjusting the frequency reader on his handheld device. The numbers jumped wildly, far outside the range of normal communication waves. "What on earth?" he whispered. Then the screen stopped moving and displayed a single message in bright green letters. Ethan Ward. He stared at the screen in shock. How could a signal from the sky know his name? Before he could think further, the rooftop lights flickered. The pulse grew stronger, shaking the antenna so hard he had to step back. Then the night sky opened. A column of blue light shot downward from above the atmosphere. It didn't move like lightning. It was controlled, smooth, focused, intentional. The light spread across the clouds, making them glow like giant floating lanterns. Birds fled into the distance. Car alarms below began to scream. People ran out of their homes, pointing upward with fear and awe. Across the world, news channels went into chaos. Unknown energy wave detected global impact possible. Is this an alien invasion? Governments urge calm. Ethan heard none of it. He stood frozen, watching as the beam of light slowly dimmed and revealed something impossibly huge. An object drifted out of the sky like a silent silver moon. It wasn't a spaceship like in the movies. There were no sharp angles, no glowing weapons. It looked almost organic, like a floating metal shell shaped by ancient rivers and winds. Smooth, calm, beautiful, and terrifying. The entire city fell silent. People stared. Some whispered prayers. Some cried. Some simply stood still, unable to move. Ethan felt his heartbeat hammering in his chest. The signal had called his name, and now a ship had appeared. Somehow, some way, both events were connected. He didn't know how he knew that, but the feeling grew stronger every second. Within minutes, Earth's militaries were alerted. Fighter jets rose into the air around the ship but kept a safe distance. Governments tried to make contact. Radios buzzed with messages in every language. Finally, the ship responded. A soft, calm voice echoed through global communication networks. Not loud, not threatening, almost gentle. People of Earth, we come in need. We seek the one called Ethan Ward. The world went silent. Ethan nearly dropped his device. His knees felt weak. He looked around, wondering if someone would jump out and say this was a strange prank. But the fear in the faces below told him it was real. Why him? He was no hero, no scientist, no leader. Just a man who fixed water systems. Security forces arrived at his building within minutes. Officers knocked urgently on his door. When Ethan answered, they stared at him like he was radioactive. "Sir, we need you to come with us," one officer said. "The Global Council wants to speak with you." Within an hour, Ethan was sitting inside a secure government facility, surrounded by generals, scientists, diplomats, and intelligence officers. Everyone looked confused and stressed. A scientist showed him the decoded signal. "It repeated your name exactly 87 times, she said. "Nothing else. Just your name." A general asked him if he had secret contact with aliens. Ethan nearly choked on the water he was drinking. "No, I've never even met anyone from outside the country, let alone another world." Experts scanned his clothes, skin, DNA. everything they could legally check. But they found nothing unusual. Ethan felt small, like a bug under a microscope. Then the ship made contact again. A large circular screen in the room lit up with a soft blue glow. A figure appeared, not clearly formed, more like a silhouette wrapped in light. The diplomats froze. The figure spoke in a calm, musical voice. "Ethan Ward, you are needed." The diplomat stepped forward. "Why him? Why choose this individual? On what basis?" The figure paused as if choosing its words carefully. "Our world dies. Our people weaken. A plague burns through our generations. We have searched many systems for a solution, and your world holds the answer. Among your species, only one holds the pattern strong enough to stabilize our cure. That one is Ethan Ward." Ethan felt lightheaded. "Pattern? What pattern?" The figure extended a hand of light toward him. "Your biological structure contains resilience lost to our kind. You carry markers that survived ancient Earth pandemics. These patterns can restore what our world lacks. You are the fertile one." The room fell silent. The term, fertile, made many officials tense, but the alien quickly clarified. "Not reproduction, not physical union. We speak of cellular strength of life stability. Our species can no longer generate stable generations. With your pattern, we can rebuild our failing biology before we fade forever." Ethan exhaled in relief. So, it wasn't anything improper. It was biology. Genetics. Survival. The diplomats whispered among themselves. Then one of them asked, "If he refuses?" The alien's form dimmed slightly. "Then our world will end. Billions of lives. Entire forests. Oceans. And ancient histories. We will not force him. But he is our last hope." All eyes turned to Ethan. He felt the weight of a world he had never seen pressing against his chest. He was just an engineer. Someone who fixed pipes and filters. What could he possibly do for an alien civilization? But the ship had come across the stars for him. They had risked everything. And if he refused, billions would die. He swallowed hard. "I want one thing," he said in a steady voice. "If I go with you, I want to help as a human representative, not as a test subject. I want respect, and I want transparency." The alien bowed. "You shall have both." The diplomat stared at him. "Ethan, are you sure you want to do this?" He looked down at his hands. They were shaking, but not with fear, something else. A strange sense of purpose he had never felt before. "I don't know why they chose me," he said quietly. "But if I can save a world, I have to try." "Why?" The alien ship opened a doorway of blue light. Ethan stepped forward, his heart racing. He turned once, taking a last look at the humans behind him, the only world he had ever known. Then he walked into the light, and the doorway closed behind him. Ethan opened his eyes to a light unlike anything he had ever seen. It was soft but bright, spreading evenly across a room that seemed alive. The walls weren't walls, they shimmered like liquid silver, shifting slightly as if breathing. He blinked and realized he was no longer on Earth. A gentle hum filled the air, vibrating through his bones without hurting them. It was calm, almost welcoming. "Welcome to Averos." "Ethan Ward," said a voice. It was the same calm, musical tone as before. This time, however, it came from a figure standing at the far end of the room. The being was tall and slender, with a smooth, shimmering body that reflected the light around it. Its eyes glowed softly, without pupils. But Ethan could feel intelligence, curiosity, and something almost human behind them. You brought me here," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "Why me?" The figure inclined its head. "You are the only one whose biological patterns can stabilize our species. We have searched many worlds. You were chosen because your genome contains rare markers that survived Earth's ancient pandemics and environmental catastrophes. These markers can help us restore life to Averos before it dies completely." Ethan swallowed. He had never imagined he would matter to an entire world. Not only that, but he now had the fate of billions in his hands. The being extended its hand, and a holographic map appeared above it. Cities, rivers, and forests glowed faintly. Some areas pulsed red, while others were dull gray. The red areas, the alien explained, were nearly lifeless zones, where the plague had killed most of the population. Entire oceans were contaminated. Crops no longer grew, and their animals few remained. Your species, Ethan, can show us hope, the figure said. But you must understand. Time is short. Less than one cycle remains before most of our ecosystems collapse completely. Ethan took a step back, overwhelmed. One cycle? That's like a year for you? The figure nodded. Yes. One cycle. After that, extinction is inevitable. The room shifted again, this time revealing a larger chamber filled with Avarosian scientists. Their faces were serious, their bodies glowing faintly with life energy. Ethan could see their concern, worry etched into every line of their shimmering skin. You will live among us, learn our methods, and help us, the lead scientist said. We do not fully understand human biology, but your genetic patterns may hold the key to our survival. Ethan nodded, trying to steady his racing heart. I'll do whatever I can. For days, he underwent tests. Long hours of analysis, holographic simulations, and molecular scans left him exhausted. Each night, he lay on a soft platform in his chamber, staring at the glowing ceiling, thinking about Earth. He missed the sky he could actually touch. The smell of rain, the sound of waves on the shore, but Averos was dying, and he was their only hope. One morning, while walking through a corridor lined with reflective walls, Ethan overheard a group of Avarosian researchers speaking in their soft, musical language. They doubt him, one said. Humans are unpredictable, another replied. We cannot trust patterns that were never tested in our environment. Ethan felt a pang of frustration. They didn't know him, yet they doubted him. On Earth, he had always been overlooked, just another engineer quietly fixing things. But here, he had been chosen for greatness, and they treated him like a mistake. He decided to prove them wrong. In the lab, Ethan watched simulations of the Avarosian plague spread across their world. The visuals were horrifying. Trees collapsed into dust, rivers turned black, and animals twitched in agony. Even the cities, once glittering monuments of knowledge and art, were crumbling, their life energy fading. This is worse than I imagined, Ethan whispered. The lead scientist, a tall Avarosian named Soren, placed a glowing hand on his shoulder. It is not your burden alone, Ethan. You are our guide, not our savior. We will work together. Ethan nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. Over the next few days, he began teaching the Avarosians human problem-solving techniques. They were brilliant in calculation and memory, but they had lost creativity. Every solution followed rigid rules. Ethan showed them improvisation. How to experiment, how to consider multiple options at once. Sometimes, he explained, the answer isn't in the formula. It's in trying, failing, and trying again. Slowly, they began to listen. Slowly, they began to hope. But even as progress was made, opposition grew. Some Avarosians believed no human could ever truly understand their biology. They feared contamination, cultural corruption, and the loss of identity. Ethan learned of a radical faction that wanted to expel him immediately. They claimed humans had no right to interfere, that their world must face its fate naturally. They saw him as a threat, even though he had come to help. One evening, the radicals approached him in the halls. Their eyes glowed red, signaling anger. Why do you persist? One demanded. You are not one of us. You will destroy what little remains. Ethan raised his hands. I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to give you a future. Isn't that what everyone wants? The radicals laughed bitterly and walked away, unconvinced. Ethan sighed. Change would not be easy. Meanwhile, The triumvirate, the three leaders of Avaros, summoned him. They were the oldest living beings on Avaros, their faces lined with years of worry and failure. "You must understand," said one of them, a female voice flowing like wind. "Your presence is not only science, it is hope. Our people need hope, Ethan. Without it, even the cure will fail." Ethan realized then that his role was larger than biology. He had to inspire, teach, and guide. The survival of a world depended not just on genes, but on the courage of its people. Days passed, blending into nights. Ethan worked with the scientists, analyzing data, testing simulations, and creating preliminary models for restoring the Avarosian genome. He learned their history, the wars, the environmental mistakes, the plague that had slowly killed their population. He learned their culture, the art, the music, the poetry embedded in every calculation. Despite their decline, Ethan found beauty in Avaros. The way light reflected off silver trees, the songs of rare birds that had survived, the soft hum of their cities, and through it all, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He was only one human, one ordinary human. But the fate of Avaros rested on his shoulders. One night, as he gazed out at the darkened world through a high tower window, Soren joined him. "You do not see it yet, Ethan," she said softly. "But your presence is already changing us. Not just our methods, but our minds. Creativity, courage, hope. These were lost. And now, because of you, they return." Ethan nodded, a quiet smile forming. "I never thought fixing things would lead to this." Soren laughed softly. "Sometimes the smallest actions matter most, even on a world facing extinction." In that moment, Ethan realized something important. He was no longer just an engineer. He was a bridge, a connection between worlds, species, and possibilities. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't even know if the cure would work, but he could try. And trying, he knew, was already better than despair. The following day, the first preliminary tests began. Ethan injected samples of his cells into controlled simulations of Avarosian biology. The results were astonishing. Where there had been decay, new energy sparked. Where there had been failure, stability emerged. His genome, his simple, human genome, was the key. The room erupted in quiet celebration. Avarosians, usually restrained in emotion, showed small signs of wonder. Ethan felt something strange in his chest, a mixture of relief and awe. But the real challenge had only begun. The tests were only simulations. The world outside the forests, the rivers, the cities remained in peril. And time was running out. As he left the lab that evening, walking through the silver halls of Avaros, Ethan whispered to himself, "I don't know if I can save a world, but I have to try." And for the first time, he believed that an ordinary human could do something extraordinary. Ethan had been on Avaros for weeks now. Each day brought new discoveries, new challenges, and new doubts. The planet seemed even more fragile than he had first imagined. Vast rivers had dried to cracked beds. Forests that once stretched endlessly were now skeletons of silver bark and twisted roots. The few remaining animals scuttled cautiously across the barren lands. Despite the devastation, Ethan refused to let despair take hold. He spent most of his days in the central laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays, glowing vials, and Avarosian scientists who watched him as closely as he watched the data. One morning, Soren approached him with a serious expression. "Ethan, we've found something," she said. "An ancient database, hidden beneath the city of Vera. It contains samples of wild-form Avarosian DNA that were abandoned centuries ago because they were considered unstable." Ethan leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "Unstable? How unstable?" "They were too unpredictable for large-scale use," Soren explained. "But your genome might stabilize them. You could make the impossible possible." Ethan's mind raced. The wild-form DNA represented a risk, Yes, but it was also a chance. He could see the future unfold in his mind. If it worked, Averos would regain fertility, biodiversity, and life. If it failed, everything would collapse faster. I want to see it, he said firmly. They traveled to Vera, a city buried deep beneath Averosian silver towers. It had once been a bustling hub of knowledge and technology. But now, it was silent. Dust floated in the air, settling on cracked floors and broken consoles. In the central archive, holographic shelves flickered to life, displaying countless vials, each containing DNA samples of long-extinct species or rare human-like genetic markers from early experiments. Ethan felt a shiver of awe. These vials contained the history of a civilization, frozen in time. He approached the largest vial, labeled V13, and examined it. It pulsed faintly with life. A small spike of energy ran through his fingertips as he touched the holographic interface. "This is it," Soren said softly. "This one has potential, but it has never been tested in our environment." Ethan took a deep breath. He knew the dangers. If the wild form DNA interacted incorrectly with Averosian biology, it could cause massive collapse, even accelerate the plague. But he also knew the stakes. Failure to act meant extinction. "We have one chance," he said. "We combine this DNA with my stabilized pattern. We create a hybrid system that can regenerate the planet's biological structure." The scientists exchanged nervous glances. "You understand what this means, Ethan," said one. "If the combination fails, billions of lives could be lost." Ethan nodded. "I understand, but doing nothing guarantees that same outcome." For days, Ethan worked tirelessly. He merged his human genetic markers with the wild form DNA, creating simulations of the hybrid sequences in the lab. Each failure taught him something new. Each partial success gave him hope. He began to notice patterns: how certain sequences stabilized faster, how others could amplify life energy when combined with his genome. As the hybrid models progressed, the once doubting scientists began to respect him in a way they never had before. They saw his creativity, his intuition, his willingness to take calculated risks, qualities their civilization had lost long ago under strict rules and fear of failure. One night, as Ethan reviewed the latest simulation, a warning alert appeared. An unauthorized attempt to access the lab's systems. Before he could react, the door slid open, and a group of radical Averosians stormed in. Their eyes glowed red with anger. "You do not belong here," their leader shouted. "You are destroying our heritage. Our world should remain ours, untainted by a human mind." Ethan stepped back, raising his hands in calm. "I am not destroying anything. I'm trying to save your world. If I fail, we all die. Do you want that?" The leader's face twisted with anger and fear. "We will not let you meddle with what we cannot control." They approached, and Ethan realized the situation was more dangerous than he expected. But he stayed calm, looking around the room for options. His mind raced. He needed to reason with them. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I am not replacing you. I am giving you a choice, a chance to survive. You think this is meddling, but this is hope. If you stop me now, hope dies with you." The radicals hesitated, visibly shaken. Their leader's glow dimmed slightly as he glanced at a small monitor showing the planet's failing biosystems. Ethan seized the moment. "Do you want your forests to grow again? Do you want your rivers to flow? Your species to live? Then stand with me." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, the leader stepped back. "Perhaps we have no choice." The radicals withdrew, leaving Ethan shaken but unharmed. He knew the world outside was still fragile, and not everyone would understand. But he had made a start. The following days were filled with tension and careful work. Ethan supervised the integration of his patterns with the wild form DNA. It was painstaking, requiring precision and constant adjustments. Finally, after countless tests, the first hybrid sample stabilized. Energy pulsed within it, strong and steady. Where decay had been, growth appeared. Where instability had lurked, order emerged. The lab erupted in quiet celebration. Scientists who had doubted him now smiled with awe and respect. Soren placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You have done what we thought impossible," she said. "You have given life a chance again." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The weight of responsibility was still heavy, but this was the first step. A solution was within reach, but the real challenge awaited: deploying the cure across the entire planet. Averos's cities, forests, and oceans were too vast and interconnected for lab tests alone. To save the world, the hybrid DNA needed to be spread globally. Integrated with the environment itself, the triumvirate convened a council meeting to decide the next steps. Every decision mattered. Every delay could cost millions of lives. "The hybrid serum is ready," Ethan announced. "We can release it into the atmosphere, rivers, and soil. It will stabilize the plague and regenerate our ecosystems. But it is untested on a large scale. Any error could accelerate the collapse." The council murmured, debating ethics, risks, and identity. Some feared losing their heritage if human patterns became part of their biology. Others argued survival must come first. Finally, one council member spoke. "We must act. If we do nothing, all life dies. We cannot allow fear to stop us now." Ethan nodded. This was the moment that would define the future of Averros. He would not fail. That night, before deployment, Ethan walked alone in a quiet part of the city. The once great towers of silver reflected the dim light of distant stars. The streets were empty, silent, except for the faint hum of life energy lingering in the air. He thought about Earth, about his home, about his small, ordinary life that had led him here. He realized that in all his days as an engineer, he had never felt more useful, more alive. He whispered to himself, "I may be ordinary, but maybe ordinary can save worlds." The next morning, the deployment began. Nanoparticles carrying the hybrid DNA were released into the atmosphere, rivers, and soil. Across the planet, sensors monitored the spread. The initial readings were tense. Nothing dramatic happened at first. Scientists held their breath, unsure if hope would survive. Then, slowly, energy readings began to shift. Forests that had been dormant for decades pulsed with light. Rivers that were black began to clear. Animals stirred, moving with newfound vitality. Plants sprouted tiny green shoots. The room erupted in quiet awe, then cheers. Averosians wept openly, unable to contain their joy. Ethan stood quietly, feeling a mixture of relief and wonder. The world was alive again, not completely, but enough to survive. Enough to rebuild. Soren approached him, smiling softly. "You did it, Ethan. You gave life a chance." Ethan nodded, overwhelmed by emotion. "We did it," he corrected. "All of us together." And for the first time since arriving, he allowed himself to believe that even an ordinary human could do extraordinary things. The hybrid cure was just the beginning. Challenges remained, and Averros would take years to heal fully. But hope had returned, and in a world on the edge of silence, hope was everything. The first rays of light stretched across Averros like soft silver threads. For the first time in decades, the cities, forests, and rivers glimmered with renewed energy. Ethan stood atop one of the tallest towers in Vera, gazing out at the slowly recovering world. The once dead forests now pulsed faintly with life. The rivers, previously black and stagnant, sparkled as they carried the hybrid cure through the land. Even the smallest animals were stirring, blinking awake in a world that had nearly forgotten life. He felt a mixture of awe, relief, and exhaustion. Weeks of work, of sleepless nights, of careful planning and delicate negotiations with the Averosians had led to this moment. He was just an ordinary human, an engineer from a small city on a distant planet, and yet here he was, standing at the center of a world's revival. The triumvirate called for a planetary council in the Grand Hall of Vera. The building shimmered like living crystal, filled with the leaders, scientists, and representatives from every surviving city. Citizens crowded in the streets below, watching through holographic projections, their faces lit with hope and curiosity. Ethan walked slowly into the hall, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. His footsteps echoed softly, but the silence in the room was deafening. The council waited for him to speak. One of the triumvirate, the eldest among them, raised a glowing hand. "Ethan Ward," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "you have risked your life to save ours. You have faced doubt, opposition, and danger for the sake of our survival. Speak to us now, as a human, as a guide, as a friend." Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He could feel the tension in the air, the hopes, the fears, the expectations of an entire world resting on him, and yet, he realized, he could not fail them now. "I am not a hero," he began. "I am an ordinary human from a distant planet. I never expected to be here. I never expected to matter in the way you all have needed me to. But I have learned something important since I arrived. One person, one life, one choice can make a difference. Even when it seems impossible, even when the world feels too broken to fix." He paused, looking around at the faces before him. Some were bright with hope, others still uncertain. "You have the power to rebuild. Not just your biology, not just your cities, but your spirit. This cure, this hybrid pattern, it is only the beginning. The future belongs to you, Averos. You must protect it, nurture it, and guide it forward. But remember, hope is not found in genes alone. It is found in your courage, your wisdom, your willingness to act when all seems lost." A quiet murmur spread through the hall. The triumvirate exchanged glances, impressed by the simplicity and clarity of his words. "Today, we release life across Averos," Ethan continued. "But tomorrow, it will be your choices, your work, and your hearts that determine if this world survives. I came here to help, and I have. But now, it is your turn." The council remained silent for a moment, absorbing his words. Then, the eldest of the triumvirate spoke again. "Your presence has not only brought life to our people, but also reminded us of what we lost. We feared extinction, and in that fear, we lost courage. You have restored more than biology, Ethan Ward. You have restored hope." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest he had never known before. He had always considered himself an ordinary person. But the recognition, the gratitude, and the faith of an entire world humbled him. The following days were filled with cautious celebration and careful observation. The hybrid cure spread naturally, integrating with the environment, stabilizing the failing biological systems, and bringing life back to the deadlands. Forests grew visibly thicker in some areas, rivers cleared in others, and wildlife began returning to its natural habitats. Scientists monitored the results, astonished by the speed and effectiveness of the cure. Radical factions that had doubted Ethan now observed silently from the sidelines. Some continued to fear human interference, but even they could not deny the evidence before them. Life returned. Averos had been given a second chance. Ethan spent his days teaching and guiding. He showed Avarosians how to maintain the balance between their ecosystems, how to combine science with creativity, and how to rebuild their world without repeating the mistakes that had brought them to the brink of extinction. During these days, he also explored the planet outside the cities. He wandered through silver forests, listening to the hum of life returning. He walked along rivers now teeming with small fish and watched animals cautiously return to their homes. The planet was healing, slowly but surely, and he felt pride and awe in every step he took. Even as life returned, challenges remained. Some cities were still weakened. Forests had to be replanted carefully, and certain species required monitoring to prevent collapse. Ethan realized that the cure was not a magic solution, it was a beginning. The people of Averos would have to work together, protect their environment, and value life in every form if their world was to survive for generations. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the horizon, Ethan stood on a hill overlooking a restored valley. The soft glow of the moons reflected off the newly flowing river. Trees swayed gently, their silver leaves shimmering in the light. He took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs. For the first time, he felt a sense of peace. Soren approached him, her form glowing softly. "Ethan," she said, "you have given us more than life. You have given us courage, hope, and the understanding that one being can make a difference." Ethan shook his head. "I am just one human. I only did what I thought was right. It was your people, your decisions, your willingness to try, that saved this world." "No," Soren insisted. "Your courage guided us. Your creativity inspired us. Without you, we may have failed." Ethan smiled faintly. He felt the weight of his journey and the responsibility that still lay ahead. "Then let us ensure it never fails again," he said. In the capital city, the triumvirate called for a public ceremony to honor the return of life to Averos. Citizens from every corner of the planet gathered in the central plaza, their faces bright with wonder and gratitude. Holographic displays showed the spread of the hybrid cure, rivers flowing, forests growing, and animals returning to their habitats. The eldest triumvirate member raised her hand and spoke to the crowd. "Today, we celebrate not only the revival of our world but also the courage of one being who reminded us that hope is never lost. Ethan Ward, a human from a distant world, has shown us that even the smallest life can have the greatest impact." The crowd erupted in cheers. Ethan stood quietly, his heart full. He had never imagined being recognized like this, yet he felt no pride in himself alone. He thought of every scientist, every Averosian citizen, every creature returning to life. This was a victory shared by all. As the cheers continued, Ethan realized something profound. Humanity, his home planet, had always been small in the vast universe, but humans had resilience, creativity, and courage that could inspire worlds. Averos was proof that even one human, one ordinary life, could make the impossible possible. Weeks passed. Averos slowly returned to life. Cities began to function again. Agriculture resumed, and ecosystems stabilized. The radical factions, once opposed to Ethan's presence, now worked alongside scientists to rebuild their world. Averosians no longer feared the unknown, they embraced it. Ethan's role shifted from being the key to survival to being a guide, teacher, and friend. He traveled between cities, teaching Averosians how to maintain balance, how to innovate, and how to value life in all forms. His presence reminded them that survival required not just technology but courage, creativity, and hope. One day, as he stood overlooking a restored forest, Soren joined him once more. "You could stay here," she said softly. "You could live among us, guiding Averos forever." Ethan shook his head. "I am grateful, but my home is elsewhere. Humanity may need me someday, and other worlds may face challenges I can help with. I came here to help, and I will continue helping wherever I can. But I must return to being human." Soren nodded, understanding. "Then go, Ethan Ward. But know this: your actions will be remembered for generations. You are not just a visitor. You are part of Averosian history." Ethan smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had arrived as an ordinary human and left as someone who had shaped the fate of an entire world. He had learned that courage, creativity, and hope could change the course of history, no matter how small one felt. As he prepared to depart, Ethan stood once more atop a high tower, looking at the thriving planet below. Rivers sparkled, forests stretched across the horizon, animals roamed freely, and cities glimmered with life. Averos had been given a second chance, he whispered quietly. Even an ordinary human can do extraordinary things. And as the ship carried him back toward the stars, Ethan Ward knew that the story of one human saving a world would be told for generations, not as a tale of power or dominance, but as a testament to hope, courage, and the enduring spirit of humanity. Averos would live. Humanity had shown its strength, and the universe had witnessed that even one human could make a difference.